Hey everybody, welcome to Spilling the IT. Today, I am focused on business continuity planning. However, it's not just me, it's usually Adam Burke as well. But today, it's very exciting. I'm going to hit the little graphic thing. We have Shawn Davidson. Shawn Davidson with Quest is joining us as well. So, today we're going to dive in and talk about business continuity planning. If you have any questions about business continuity, Quest is joining us as well.
Oh.
So, today we're going to dive in and talk about. Fixed it. All right. So that's the magic of life. It goes wrong always. If you have questions, you can add them in YouTube or Facebook. Right now we're broadcasting in both, and we can use those questions later on in the show. So real quick, when I was doing some research and getting questions, I just want to, real quick, this is going to go to you, Shawn, real fast. Does BCP stand for Babies Can Punch?
No, it does not. I'm going to say no.
Okay, which I imagine would be an underground fighting ring for babies. But it's
very
not.
Different. I'm thinking very different. Yeah.
Okay. That's gonna
First
change.
rule of Baby Fight Club, Paul. Don't talk about it.
You don't goo-goo or gaga about it. Okay. That's going to change my line of questioning then.
I would imagine.
Yeah. Okay. So what is business continuity planning? We'll start there.
Yeah, so really at its core, we see business continuity planning as understanding the critical business processes for any company or organization, and then really just making sure that there's controls, appropriate controls in place to be able to protect those critical business processes. So any type of disaster, incident response from a cybersecurity event or what have you, the organization would be able to appropriately respond and resume business. So that's at its core, that's what we see business continuity planning.
Okay, and and Adam, if you have thoughts on this too, what are common disruptions? So you mentioned like disruptions, you mentioned like when things go wrong. What are the most common ones businesses run into?
Yeah, Adam, I'll take this right off the bat here. Generally, what we see is a lot of cybersecurity events these days. So that can certainly be a business interrupting event. We do work with a lot of clients in hurricane territory, tornado territory, or like Northern California right now, going through a lot of the fires. So we see natural disasters, we see cyber events. It could be power outages, those types of things as well. So there's multiple types of scenarios that can impact the business for sure.
Yeah, from a continuity standpoint, I know, Shawn, you and I we've gone through a lot of workshops and worked with a lot of clients on this type of thing, but it's the human error and just sometimes just the mistakes that are made within an environment that very tough to foresee how that's going to happen and when it's going to kick off. But I know there's stats about this all over the place, but sometimes human error can surprisingly be one of the highest incidents of kind of the whoops situation, right?
Yeah, for sure. Or just an organization not necessarily knowing the risks within their environment. So, single points of failure, being equipment, that could be something. There's more resiliency in a lot of the customer environments these days with a lot of the cloud services, but I think there's also a lot of presumed resiliencies that aren't there. So from an IT standpoint, just making sure you're going through and doing those deep dives into all avenues to make sure that your business is resilient, technology-wise, business process-wise, crisis communication, and escalation processes and procedures as well.
Yeah.
Got it. So Adam, you said people are fallible.
Sometimes people are people and they make mistakes, right? So it just it kind of depends on your risk tolerance and how you want to look at it. We had one client actually this week who was going through
some people make mistakes, some people flawless. I'm not gonna name names. Some people flawless, correct?
Yeah, no. I mean, we had a client, I think this week, or someone who was brought to our attention that, there was, they kind of lost some connectivity. They're looking for diverse paths and kind of getting, an alternate path out to the internet. And they kind of, rather than getting a diverse path, they kind of made a choice about what to do on a firewall, about how to basically resolve something. And, the choice basically allowed certain things to happen and pass through without being inspected, rather than really kind of addressing the fact that you basically just allowed an application to have free reign in your environment, so you wouldn't impact communications. But there's that downside risk of, okay, you just basically opened up a pretty big hole. So Shawn, when you're talking to clients, how do you kind of walk that line of, you sure you want to do that? With the, hey, like, their risk tolerance, and that's definitely got to be a little bit of a challenge, because you don't want to disagree, but you also want to make sure, hey, you're about to walk on a tightrope and there's no net right now. Good.
Yeah. So I think it takes a tremendous amount of discovery. So when we're doing like a business impact analysis or a risk assessment, we're going through, and like you just mentioned, we're trying to identify those risks, whether it's a human element or just some type of single point of failure within your ISP. It depends. There's just such a broad amount of things and discovery that we go through. So for me, I feel as a consultant, it's kind of empowering, because it's not us to make the decision on if they want to mitigate that risk or not. It's really the business decision. Our job is to bring those to light. So our job is to say, hey, look, you've got some gaping holes here. You might want to look at these, and you have a whole bunch of other smaller issues that could lead to something big. What do you guys want to do? And we can kind of help them guide that, prioritize those risks and things of that nature. But, a lot of times organizations will just accept the risk because of the financial impact of having to, mitigate it. And that's fine. That's their decision from our standpoint.
Do you guys ever find that when you're talking to clients and saying, hey, just kind of talk to us, walk us through what you're thinking, that you find that's the first time they've been doing that? Like, that is the first time they've actually had to like stop and think about this stuff?
All the time.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, all the time. Yeah. I think when you're an organization and things have always gone well, and maybe you haven't experienced an event, then you tend to take that for granted, if you will. And so you don't necessarily know or want to know that there are those risks that are out there, whether that's cybersecurity, or you haven't had a human error, you haven't had somebody delete a database, or, those types of things you haven't gone through. So events are powerful. If companies have gone through events, then they all of a sudden want to focus on it. And at that point, a lot of times it's too late. You've already had an impact to your revenue, or, maybe even worse, your reputation. But all the time, Paul, that we go through that with just a lack of understanding, and have never been through it.
So if an organization is like starting to think about the process, like where do you feel like an organization should begin? Like, what's a great starting point? Like, even if they're not going to come talk to Quest, like what should they be doing for their own organization?
Just a discovery session. So internally, what do we have in place? You don't want to exclude any group. So you want to have IT there. You want to have your critical subject matter experts for your departments and your business leaders, your executive team. And you really want to talk about at your business's core, what's our most critical business processes? So what are we trying to accomplish? What makes us money? What provides us the ability to serve our members? Whatever that goal is or mission of your organization, what supports that? What's underneath it? Technology-wise, business process-wise, documentation-wise, and are we protecting that? Anything that's worth having in any business is worth having. It requires attention, and it is worth protecting. So just starting at that like fundamental foundation of what do we have in place and what's our risks?
So I love me a good metaphor. So would you be saying then that it's kind of like the critical function is kind of like the heartbeat? Like if the heart of the company isn't going to work, the whole thing doesn't work. So it's like, that's kind of like what a critical process is, the heartbeat of the company, like what keeps it going.
Yeah. You could even go beyond that. What's the mission of our company? So we'll work with a lot of organizations that serving our members is our mission. Okay. Yeah. What's that mean to you? Let's step down from there. Okay, well, if I'm a credit union, I need to make sure they can get money. I need to make sure that they can, process loans, and we can work with them on a lending standpoint. Whatever those critical functions are, that's serving our members. So you kind of just take it from the top down, and then you can get pretty granular in like those critical business processes. And a critical business process for one department might be different from another. So that's always a challenge for us as we go through these too, because everybody thinks their business process is super critical. My job is the most important in the organization. Well, maybe not. You have to really step back and say, this is what we need to accomplish on a daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly basis for us to be able to be successful.
So do you find like a part of your job is to almost talk to a company and say like, is this really critical or is it not critical? You're kind of like the Marie Kondo of.
Does it spark revenue?
Yeah, does it spark revenue? Does it spark joy? Does it spark revenue? Like you're like, do we need this? No, let's get rid of this part. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it is. You're very neutral. So, a lot of my job is actually educating them as we're going through that process. So it's not, I'll see BIAs done from other organizations, or no, not to slam anybody, but I'll see different BIAs done, and you'll see, I need this in 5 minutes. I need this in 30 minutes. I need to be on my Outlook. What happens if you're not on your Outlook for a day? Well, I can't do my job, and you're like, well, okay, but how does that impact the organization and the goals that you have there? Are we losing money? Is it impactful to our reputation? Those types of things. And that kind of will help. And when when you gather that information and you take it back up, hopefully I'm on track here because I know I'm going into the weeds, but when you take that information back up to like the executive team, they may have a totally different perception of what's important than what you just went through. So, oh no, I really need these 3 departments or these 3 sub companies to be able to work. That could be offline for a week.
And
so,
yeah, no, this is not the weeds at all. Like our listeners are weed lovers. They love going in the weed. They love listening to that. That didn't come out the way I wanted it to come out.
It is Friday.
Yeah. They love a conversation. Adam, you want to get on this sweet metaphor game?
No, I'm good. I think you're crushing it. Yeah, you're good.
Well, I'm something. I think this is an important question. What is the difference between a business continuity plan and disaster recovery plan? Because I think sometimes they're used interchangeably, but they're wildly different. Not wildly, but they're very different.
They can be. I think oftentimes it depends on what perspective you're coming from.
Okay.
So we'll see it and traditionally, over 20 years I've been doing this, a disaster recovery plan can mean more IT oriented. So, your checklists, your disaster recovery, your IT recovery plans, where business continuity obviously has the word business in it. So it shifts more over to business functions, crisis communication, crisis management, those types of things. I don't think there's any one right answer on this. I think, both at their core, disaster recovery plan and a business continuity plan are trying to get the same goal. In my opinion, if I'm taking IT out of it, disaster recovery is immediately after the impact of a disaster. How am I recovering right after? 24 hours, 48 hours after that disaster. Where business continuity and business resumption is, what am I doing after that? So how am I continuing to resume business with my departments from either a shorter period of time or a long period of time? So both are very close. And it does oftentimes, I would say most of the time in our involvement, IT disaster recovery plan is more disaster recovery plan perceived from our clients, and business continuity is more owned by the business or maybe the risk end of our clients.
Yeah, I know we've gone through some workshops, Shawn, where like that crisis communication and then ongoing communication plan, and how the organizations communicate not only to their clients, but also to their employees. Like, hey, where you were operating here. I mean, we saw the entire world kind of go through a business continuity effort, with COVID and working from home, right? So when everyone kind of went to a work from home model, that is a continuity plan as far as like, okay, well, how do we keep things operational? How do you deal with, people now all of a sudden working from home and coordinating resources and making sure things are getting addressed. So not that it was a total disaster in the sense that, the building's cratered or fired or anything like that, but it is there. We did see a ton of people go through either a scripted and coordinated continuity executed plan, or hey, they had to roll with what they had.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was just on a call yesterday where we're working with a client on a business continuity plan, and we had done their BIA, and now we're 90% done with their BCP. And I think we're just in it so much, especially with the pandemic, not to beat on that topic, but we're in it on such a daily basis that they said, hey, remember, we're still in a disaster. We're still executing on our disaster recovery plan right now. We're working from home. We're pulling some people in. We're our crisis communication teams engaged on a daily basis with our vendors and with our employees, letting them know what's happening. I'm like, yeah, you're absolutely right. It's an extended, you're now executing on that business continuity plan. So not to go off on a separate topic, but what's came up a lot lately is we're in one disaster. What happens if another disaster now happens? Like now I have an earthquake in the Bay Area, or if I have, obviously we got the fires or some type. We were positioned this way as part of our business continuity plan because we're all working in the office. We're all doing these types of things. What are we going to do now that another event has happened and we're in work from home pandemic mode?
Yeah.
So. And are you finding more companies are starting to think on almost like a multi-tier approach, whereas like if one thing goes wrong, what else might go wrong, and then kind of plan for that as well?
No, not really.
Oh,
no,
okay.
No, I don't think so. I think everybody's still
in a reactive kind of thing. Everyone's kind of dealing with it as it comes.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's what we see most of the time. You can't really paint a broad brush across everybody. I mean, we see organizations that are really resilient and, have a lot of the tabletop exercise, and they're going through this thought process on a daily basis. And then we see others that are, we'll just kind of get through it, So there's a broad range of, from hoping to actually having plans in place.
And do they think they're going to overcome it? And they're like, we'll deal with it when we need to, because that's how they've done it before and it worked out fine? Or it's just they've never really come across any situation like that, so they're not really sure what they might have to have in order to prepare. Does that make sense?
I would say yes and yes.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I think those are two main reasons, right? They never have came across that, or they're just, a lot of businesses don't have the resources and the time to actually dedicate to it. So if I'm a small regional bank, or if I'm, an organization where we're just stretched so thin just to get through our normal business operations, and then every year I get audited and I'm hit without having a business continuity plan or, security incident response plans in place. Okay, great, I'll get to that. And then the focus just kind of fades because they haven't necessarily had, the resources to spend on it, whether that's money to have a consulting firm do it or internal resources. And then even if they have internal resources, it seems like they don't know necessarily. Now, I'm not saying everybody, but they're probably a resource that's not specialized in that particular topic, that they're just getting an added duty or responsibility, and that's probably not going to be successful.
That was very thoughtful, Adam. That was very thoughtful.
Hey, you don't have anything to add. You just sometimes it's a little quick. What was the quote? Remain silent and look stupid as opposed to open your mouth and remove all doubt.
Yeah, boy, I do that all the time.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say you have the right to remain silent. I'm like, where are you hanging out?
You're like,
you do. That's true. Yes. We'll sprinkle a little Mark Twain in here. Come on, live it up on a Friday.
You're classing up. You're classing up this live stream, Adam. I appreciate it.
I do.
Maybe mix some, other deep quotes in. I'm
full of it.
IT resiliency. So how does this? You mentioned it earlier. We didn't really dive in too much, but how does this play a part? Because I hear this term thrown around a lot.
Yeah. For sure. So just at our core, we're an IT management firm. So that's, I think, where we oftentimes get pulled in initially is from the IT team looking at disaster recovery and business continuity. And, their main concern and their main area of expertise is around IT. So IT, just the delivery of IT, almost every critical business process relies on IT, whether that's your own internal infrastructure. A lot of these days we're doing vendor reviews. So we're doing service level agreement reviews with our clients to make sure that they have RTOs and RPOs, which we can talk about those terms too, in their vendor agreements. But IT resiliency is really what we look at its core as foundational to an organization. So if I have a single point of failure within my technology stack, that could be a single server, firewall, switch, something that if this thing goes offline, I'm going to lose a lot of business services. I'm going to lose 18 applications, and all of them are critical to my core business functions. So IT resiliency is critical, because I think like everything we do is related to IT in one way or the other, whether that's the SaaS service and internet resiliency is key, or all the single points of failure that can occur. So we really focus in our BIAs heavily on IT resiliency, and that it's not just as simple as I have 2 switches, I have 2 firewalls. Well, do you have contract support for those? Are you monitoring so you can actually catch when they're offline? What's your cybersecurity controls that you have in place? Because cybersecurity is a huge component too. So it's really started for us as being core in our BIAs and we call them DR reviews at the time, and it remains critical today.
Shawn, what about like just the simple things like personnel and cross training different job functions? Like one of the things that's back in Army days for us, it was in an infantry platoon, you always make sure that different people within the organization can cross train and know each other's jobs, right? When something goes wrong and you don't have that backup person to help you out, you got to have someone to step in and fulfill that role. The sports analogy, if you're a left guard, you better be able to operate as a right guard, because you are the center. You got to tap in and execute there too. Are you seeing that when you're going through IT resiliency, the personnel and job functions, and understanding, hey, who's got the password to our backups again? Like, that kind of thing. Is that something you go through? Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So that's a great point. So cross training is hard to come by. I would say probably about 20% or less of our organizations that we work with actually have the luxury of being able to have cross training in place. But we absolutely go through that. That's a risk that comes up on many of our reviews, as well as documentation, standard operating procedure documentation. So if Adam's not there, who can pick up that document and at least get 80% of that job done, or 7? I mean, that's an extreme situation. Nobody can do what Adam does. But those are all things that are as critical as anything else. Is making sure that the other one too, I should probably mention, is like your vendor resiliency and your supply chain. So if you have critical vendors if you make widgets and they're a key cog in that widget making process, how protected are they? Or if they go offline, do you have vendor resiliency? Can you actually go over to another company and they'd be able to perform those functions? We see that a lot with printing companies that have core printing vendors that they rely on, or manufacturing all the time. Parts are coming in from like just in time type situations where parts are coming in right off the shelf and you're getting them. Oh, that part's not there now and it's not going to be there for a week. I can't make my entire whatever that I need to make. So, and those sometimes can be very difficult to mitigate those risks, but just understanding them is key too, because I've had some companies that I have a coffee grinder or machine that's as big as this room here. It would take me 8 months to get another one from Germany. I'm a coffee company.
This is a company you've worked with, or are you just like humble bragging?
No, this is
okay. Got it. You don't have a coffee machine. Got it. Okay.
I don't have that.
That's impressive.
That's a pretty good side hustle you got there.
A lot of coffee. I drink
Davidson brews.
Risk management, delicious.
Yeah, exactly. No, but for example, they had that as a risk, because if that failed or burned down or did whatever, they would probably be out of business. So what they did is they put a reciprocal agreement in with another competing company to say, okay, if this happens to either one of us, we'll help you guys out at a minimum. So that was kind of cool to see even competitors that had the same risk come together on a solution.
That is cool.
That reminds me of a quote by Eleanor Roosevelt that says, "The future belongs to those who believe in the beauty of their dreams." I think that Yeah, that's the quote that
It
came
does
up.
not apply at all. That is not applicable whatsoever to the current conversation. You can't just throw in an Eleanor Roosevelt quote to no, nope.
You don't know where he's going, Adam. He might be segueing right into something else here.
Adam, it's like Oprah Winfrey says, you can have it all, just not all at once. I think that's really what business continuity is planning is about. That's about core functions, Adam. What are your core functions?
You're just Googling inspirational quotes.
Yeah, no, I am. I absolutely am. But that Oprah one does apply because your core function, you can't have it all. What's your core function? That's really what Oprah was talking about.
I think she might have started business continuity then.
Yeah.
And you get a BIA, and you get a BIA.
I like it.
So we're coming up close on a half an hour. Is there anything else that you guys would kind of like to talk about business continuity planning, disaster recovery, preparing your, people's companies out there? Anything you'd like to kind of share?
I think, I just don't think it has to be all that complex. I know that's easy for me to say doing this for 20 years, but I think, that's some of the fear of organizations that are.
Do you find that? You find that a lot of people are just kind of like, oh, this is too much for us. We can't handle it.
We don't even know where to start.
Yeah.
So we'll put not just a negative term, but we'll put our head in the sand, or we'll pass the buck for another year and kind of, hope for the best next year. Or maybe we hire somebody that does it, or who knows. But it really doesn't have to be that complex. And it really doesn't have to take all that much time. If you are efficient with your discovery processes, if you spend a little bit of time, you can really, have a good return.
And I'm kind of putting you on the spot. If you were to say like your top 3 things a business should do, I would say probably it sounds like core functions. Figuring out your core functions is probably one of those 3 things you should definitely do. What would be like 2 other things that a company could, do next week to get ready for any sort of event?
Yeah. I think that discovery process is number one. So just understanding the critical business processes within the organization, and then being real with yourself. So once you get that information back, not necessarily feeling like you have to go address every single thing that's on that list, but if there are high priority items, remediating those maybe, and looking at things objectively. A lot of organizations will just have this sense that we're okay, we're going to be fine, and so a little bit of denial maybe involved there too. So first and foremost, I'd go through the discovery process. Second, I would address the risks that are most significant, and then third, just the thing too, Paul, I would probably focus on is if you're going to go through this effort, don't just do it once. This is not just a one-time thing where you're done at the end of the project. I always like to say it's a program and not just a project that we go through. So you're making sure that you're, and you don't have to mitigate everything. That's key. People will say it costs too much money because I don't have enough money to be able to go through and do all these things. Well, you don't have to. There's a thing called accepting risk. And if it's too, doesn't fit within your financial situation or your organization, there's different solutions, there's different options, and there's different pricing to get those in place too. That's probably 5 things, but I don't know.
No, that's really helpful. Adam, anything you wanted to add?
No, I mean, we work with a lot of partners as well who sometimes struggle to have this conversation with their clients. Maybe they're part of a key business function for that organization, like they're their hosting provider, or they're their application development firm, or they're providing telecommunications or voice support. These are great conversations to kind of start a discussion around business continuity with organizations, especially if you're providing those key services as well. So just start the conversation and have have that initial discovery as far as what's critical, how is it being supported right now, and what happens if it goes away, and how do you kind of protect against that as you go.
Okay, so, that's great. That's helpful. Yeah. And it's the last part of our show, so people want to know, Adam, Shawn, what TV shows are you watching? Give the people something that they can enjoy. I mean, they're enjoying this whole thing, but something that they can go and watch tonight.
Go for it.
I'm watching that eco challenge, or that race like in Fiji with Bear Grylls or whatever. One of my wife's like girlfriend's brother is on Team Curl, and he's one of the dudes on Team Curl. So they have some cameos on there, and we get to watch them every once in a while. But it's a cool one. It's a lot of fun. They're racing across Fiji and doing crazy stuff.
I've been watching that, and I literally am always shouting at the TV, wait, they're doing this all in a day? That's insane.
Yeah, they're moving for like we're on like episode 4. They've been moving for like the elite teams have been moving for something like 48 hours. I think maybe they had like an hour of sleep. It's pretty serious.
Unreal.
Yeah.
Unreal. Yeah.
So I have 2 answers, and it's probably way less interesting than that. So I am, as you guys know, the father of 2 daughters, and I have a wife. So it's very rare that I get to touch the remote control at all in any instance. And so what's on my TV is
Shawn, you're doing pretty well for yourself. Maybe time for another TV. Maybe a second TV.
Okay, touche. And then I would say when I do, my favorite shows are Ozarks.
Nice.
Bloodline is a good one, so I like Netflix quite a bit, as you can tell. And sports. That's pretty much all I watch. So Breaking Bad is always good. That's my favorite one. I could watch it every single day. But
nice.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you right now. I watched some really highbrow stuff over the weekend. I watched Deep Blue Sea 2. Yes, they made a sequel 17 years later. It is. Do you guys like the first Deep Blue Sea? Have you ever seen it?
I haven't seen it.
It's worth your time.
Okay.
Is that the one with the sharks?
Yeah, that's the one with the sharks where the system.
Where Samuel L. Jackson is giving a speech and gets eaten?
Well, okay, Adam, you just ruined it for everybody. Spoiler alert. I don't have a spoiler button for this, but
I love that one. That was so great. He's giving this big dramatic speech about how they're all going to make it and live, and then just absolutely soul-crushingly destroyed. It's fantastic.
Please send your hate mail to questsys.com.
It's been out for 12 years. If you haven't seen it by now, spoiler alert is over. Yeah.
If you want to call and say, Adam, you ruined a film for me, it's 1-800-326-4220. I will not ruin the sequel, although there's nothing to ruin. It's just a bunch of sharks. But those sharks have babies, Adam. Shawn, babies are running rampant, and these shark babies, they're hungry. So show is trash.
Sounds like Sharknado.
I think Sharknado honestly probably had a bigger budget. It's pretty bad.
Nice.
Yeah. So anyways, guys, thank you very much. Shawn, thanks for jumping on.
Thanks,
and joining us.
Anytime.
Yeah. Adam, thanks as always.
Good times, guys. Have a good week.
Yeah. Have a good weekend. Thanks for joining us, guys.
Bye.
See you later.